Indiana Fever front office is about to do another roster overhaul for the 2026 WNBA season.
Okay, so the Indiana Fever just made a move that literally no one saw coming, and I mean nobody. Hours after getting knocked out of the playoffs, they dropped 8 players in one night, just like that, and the entire WNBA went into complete chaos. Fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. Insiders were scrambling trying to figure out what just happened, and even rival coaches were caught totally off guard. So what on earth would push a franchise to completely clean house this fast, right? Was this some kind of master plan, like a calculated rebuild they'd been planning for months? Or was it just a panic move, a desperate reaction to another season that ended way too early and left everyone disappointed?
I believe a lot of players will be exiting the building like Elvis, bruh. They got to get the hell out of Dodge. Now, I'm telling you right now, I believe more than half of this team is going to leave. I just got to keep it real. A lot of players is going to leave. I believe a few big names is probably going to leave. And more importantly, we need to get the ball back to Caitlin.
One thing's absolutely clear, though. This isn't just about basketball anymore. Not even close. This is about egos clashing behind closed doors, power struggles in the front office, and this urgent race to build a championship caliber team around Caitlin Clark before the window closes. And now that the dust is starting to settle, everyone's asking the same question. Who's actually staying? Who else might be gone soon? And what does all of this mean for where the Fever are headed next? Because the real story behind these 8 cuts goes way deeper than anyone thought at first. And it all starts right here with what was really happening inside that organization.
No one predicted them to go this far, especially without Caitlin Clark. Now, granted, they was projected to be, final contenders, but that was with the roster that they had. Obviously, they had a whole nother roster. And like I keep telling y'all, momentum was the key.
When that final buzzer went off, it wasn't just the end of their playoff run. It was literally the end of an entire era for this franchise. Inside that locker room, you could feel the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. No joke. Players who had spent the entire season grinding through injuries, dealing with constant rotation changes, and navigating all kinds of locker room drama suddenly realized their futures in Indiana were hanging by a thread. The coaching staff wasn't saying much. The mood was incredibly heavy, and whispers started spreading before anyone even left the building that something big was about to go down. Sources close to the team say the decision to release 8 players wasn't some overnight thing either. This move had been brewing for weeks behind closed doors. Rumors of serious disagreements between the front office and head coach Stephanie White had been floating around for months, especially about playing time decisions and team chemistry issues. The Fever's late season collapse exposed every single weakness they had, from poor rotations to visible frustration between the veterans and the rookies. And by the time the elimination actually came, management had already made up its mind about what had to happen next.
We all know Stephanie White was running a whole lot of sets, bro. Whole lot of sets, whole lot of off-ball things, whole lot of things that Caitlin Clark really don't like to do, bro. Let's just be honest. Caitlin Clark is being the biggest trooper for this damn basketball team. But I think, just like I stated before, go back to the basics.
The Fever had invested absolutely everything into Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest star and marketing powerhouse, but as the season dragged on, fans started asking the tough question, why wasn't the team actually built around her strengths? Analysts kept pointing out that the offense had completely drifted away from the fast, free-flowing system that made Clark a college legend, and instead it became this rigid, structured thing full of forced sets, slow ball movement, and lineups that just didn't make sense. Now you heard that right, Clark did her best to adjust. She really tried, but the lack of rhythm was so obvious to anyone watching. By the final game, she looked completely exhausted, carrying way too much of the load while trying to fit into a system that just didn't fit her style at all. And then on top of all that came the injuries. One by one, key players went down, and the Fever's lack of depth was brutally exposed for everyone to see. The front office started blaming the coaching decisions, while players were pointing fingers at conditioning programs. And when the losses just kept piling up, the message became crystal clear. Something had to change, and it had to change fast. The Fever had zero intention of repeating another year of underachievement with one of the most hyped players in basketball history sitting on their roster. So after the elimination, calls were being made before the sun even came up. Agents got notified, lockers got cleared out, and 8 players were told they wouldn't be coming back, just like that.
Granted, they was running this off ball and doing all these different experiments. Without momentum, I don't believe they would have made it as far. I believe they was playing meaningful basketball just due to the amount of injuries that the team took, and it kind of motivated them. They said it in their exit interview. The bench power pretty much motivated them and gave them the energy they need to prolong and get through a bunch of them long stretches in the series.
The move was absolutely ruthless, but it sent a powerful message to everyone watching. The Fever were completely done settling for mediocrity. This was about building a team that could actually win around Clark and Aaliyah Boston, not just survive the season, but actually compete for championships. But while fans were celebrating the promise of a fresh start and a real rebuild, others saw a totally different story playing out, one of power plays, mounting pressure and control struggles at the top. Because this wasn't just a roster shakeup, not at all. It was a signal that the Fever front office had reached its absolute breaking point. And if you think the cuts stopped there, just wait until you hear who might be next on the chopping block. Because the aftermath of this massive purge made one thing crystal clear: the Fever are finally ready to build around Caitlin Clark the way she was meant to play.
Let's listen to what Caitlin Clark had to say years ago.
A huge reason why I came here, and that's what she preached to me in the recruiting process. You know, you're going to have the ball in your hands a lot. And I think a lot of my final schools kind of had that same look, but I think the read and react offense that we run was super important for myself. You know, you're making basketball reads. It's not a set. You're not being told what to do every single time you come down the floor. You're just playing the game you love.
For months, fans had been literally begging the organization to just let Caitlin be Caitlin. No more overcomplicated sets, no more forcing her off the ball for no good reason. What made her a generational star at Iowa wasn't just her incredible scoring ability, it was her freedom on the court, her natural rhythm, and her complete command of the floor. When she played with pure instinct, her teammates fed off that energy and everything clicked, but when that freedom got stripped away, the team's entire soul disappeared with it. Inside the Fever organization, several voices had been pushing hard to bring back that same read and react offense. Clark absolutely thrived during her college days, and even former Iowa coach Lisa Bluder's system was being referenced in recent meetings as the perfect example of how to maximize Clark's talent. In that system, she wasn't just a scorer, she was a creator, a conductor, the absolute heartbeat of the entire offense. And with the roster thinning out now and more cap space opening up, this could finally become her team in every sense of the word. Sources close to the front office have hinted that this entire offseason will prioritize signing players who actually fit that system. High IQ shooters, floor spacers, and teammates who can anticipate Caitlin's reads instead of just waiting around for set plays to be called. The goal is to recreate that Iowa on steroids style of basketball that lets Clark dictate the tempo and keeps defenses constantly guessing and scrambling. And insiders even joke that if you're not ready to shoot, cut, or move without the ball, don't even bother showing up to training camp. Caitlin herself has been incredibly patient through all of this, but her frustration has been visible if you were paying attention. During press conferences, she carefully chose her words, but she dropped hints about wanting a more fluid offense, and fans remember her saying she just wanted to play basketball again, which was a quiet but incredibly powerful message about how suffocating the structured system had become. Behind that calm, professional composure was a competitor who was tired of playing within limits that didn't make sense. And for Fever fans, this shift is about way more than just strategy, it's about the team's entire identity. The organization knows that when Clark is truly unleashed, everything changes. The energy in the arena shifts, the chemistry on the court clicks, even how opposing teams have to defend them completely transforms. This rebuild isn't just about cutting players who didn't, it's about cutting all the excuses that held them back. It's about aligning absolutely everything, the coaching philosophy, the recruiting strategy, and the rotations, with the player who single-handedly revitalized the WNBA's entire fan base. And if the Fever truly commit to that vision, they could be absolutely unstoppable. But that depends on one critical thing: whether Stephanie White and the coaching staff can actually adapt to this new reality, because the same coach who leans so heavily on rigid playbooks now faces the most defining moment of her career. Either she evolves with Caitlin's game and embraces this new direction, or she becomes the next name on the exit list. Simple as that. The front office has made their move and sent their message. Now the real question is, will the coach follow the vision or become its biggest obstacle standing in the way?
Now, the style of play, and this is what I've been saying, we need to go back to the basics. And the basic is this style of play with Caitlin Clark, giving her the ball. Let her play freely, openly. Let her do what she do. No calling different sets going up the court. No doing none of this. Put players around Caitlin with that know how to obviously resets, know their responsibility, because Caitlin Clark said it herself.
As the dust settled from the mass roster cut, one name kept circulating behind the scenes over and over. Head coach Stephanie White, once praised for steadying a young, developing team, she now finds herself right at the center of growing tension that everyone can feel. Insiders say her relationship with the front office has quietly deteriorated over time, and the reason is actually pretty simple. Her system just doesn't match the direction the Fever want to take moving forward. White's structured play-by-play offense worked for a time, it had its moment, but with Caitlin Clark at the helm, it started to feel seriously outdated, and fans saw it, analysts pointed it out on TV, and now the front office has made it absolutely clear, change is coming, whether she likes it or not. White's supporters argue she was dealt a really difficult hand. Multiple injuries, constantly shifting rotations, and a roster full of players still learning how to mesh around a superstar made any kind of consistency almost impossible to achieve. But her critics say she flat out refused to adapt, stubbornly clinging to a rigid system that stifled creativity and slowed the entire team down. Too often, the offense looked painfully predictable, just endless pick and rolls and isolation plays that forced Clark to operate within tight boundaries instead of letting her play on instinct. And for a player who thrives on improvisation and reading the defense, it was honestly a slow death. The breaking point reportedly came late in the season when internal meetings turned seriously heated. Front office executives wanted a much more open offense centered completely around Clark's decision-making, while White defended her approach, saying the team just wasn't ready for that kind of freedom yet. The disagreement grew into this quiet power struggle that basically defined the Fever's final stretch of games, and after their playoff elimination, one source claimed that management viewed the defeat as absolute proof that White's style couldn't get them over the hump when it mattered most. Players noticed the divide happening too. Some veterans sided with the coach, believing structure was necessary to maintain order and discipline, but younger players privately voiced frustration, saying the offense felt micromanaged and robotic, almost like they were playing scared. Caitlin Clark, ever the professional, kept her opinions really measured in public, but her body language told a completely different story if you were watching closely. You could see it on the court, the hesitation, the quick glances toward the bench, the moments where her natural flow got replaced by second guessing. It was the look of a player holding herself back. Now, with 8 players gone and the roster completely reshaped, the spotlight turns fully on Stephanie White and her uncertain future. The whispers about a potential replacement are growing louder by the day, and the Fever's front office has reportedly already begun quietly evaluating alternative coaching candidates who could bring in a more modern offensive identity, one that actually mirrors Clark's college success and plays to her strength. Whether White gets one more season or not may depend entirely on how willing she is to fundamentally change her approach, because at this point, the message from management couldn't be any clearer. This franchise belongs to Caitlin Clark now, and if the head coach can't build around her the right way, the next announcement from Indiana might not be about a player leaving. It could very well be about Stephanie White packing her bags and heading out next.
Bree Hall gone, Shea Petty gone, Natasha Howard gone, Bree Turner gone, Damster's gone. That's 5. Ariel Powers, Sydney Colson. Hold on, Sydney Colson and Damster's 8. Yep, I believe they lose 8 players. This is just my prediction.
When the news dropped that the Fever had released 8 players all at once, social media absolutely erupted. Fans were scrambling to make sense of it. Who stayed, who got cut, and why so many players at the exact same time. Within an hour, names started surfacing online, and the pattern became really clear. This wasn't random at all, it was a statement. Every single player let go represented a major shift in philosophy, a message that the Fever were completely done with mediocrity and half-hearted performances. According to reports, the cuts began with bench players who failed to make consistent impacts. Players like Shea Petty and Damiris Dantas were among the first to go, and while they'd all shown flashes of real skill at times, injuries and inconsistency plagued their entire seasons. The front office wanted reliability moving forward, not just potential that might never develop. And next came Natasha Howard, easily the biggest name on the list. Despite her experience and championship pedigree, insiders say Howard's contract demands and uneven play completely sealed her fate. She wanted top dollar, but the Fever weren't willing to invest that kind of money in a player who didn't fit a system, now built entirely around Clark and Boston. Then came the real shockers that nobody saw coming, Lexi Hull and Sydney Colson. Hull was a fan favorite and a solid defensive anchor, but the team just couldn't justify her salary anymore with declining production and growing injury concerns. And Coulson's release stirred up serious online debate because the veteran guard brought leadership and humor to the locker room that people loved. But the front office wanted youth, speed, and versatility instead, and her 2 points per game average simply didn't justify keeping her around for another year on the roster. Ariel Power's departure was maybe the most predictable of the bunch. She really struggled to find her role all season, and her fit alongside Caitlin Clark just never quite clicked the way people hoped it would. The final names were Kadisha Stokes and Chloe Bibby, developmental pieces the team actually still liked, but when you're reshaping an entire roster from the ground up, sentiment has to take a back seat to the bigger vision. 8 players gone, just like that in one night. And the move freed up significant cap space, giving the Fever the kind of financial flexibility they haven't had in years. Fans immediately started speculating like crazy about who could replace them. Shooters, lockdown defenders, or experienced veterans who could actually complement Clark's tempo and style. But beyond all the excitement and speculation, there was this somber undertone to everything, because these weren't just cuts on a spreadsheet, they were real casualties of a larger rebuild that demanded total buy-in to a completely new identity. Each player's exit carried its own story. Some will find homes with other teams pretty quickly, others might not return to the league at all, and it's just a brutal reality of professional basketball, one that reminds everyone this isn't college ball anymore, where loyalty means something different. The Fever are moving fast and making hard decisions, and anyone not keeping pace with that new direction will absolutely be left behind. But still, there's one lingering question among fans that keeps coming up. Did the front office move way too quickly? 8 players in one massive sweep feels drastic, almost desperate even. But in the eyes of management, this was necessary surgery, painful for sure, but absolutely essential for the future. They're betting everything that by cutting out the old system entirely, they can rebuild something way better from scratch. And if it works, this mass exodus might be remembered as the night the Indiana Fever finally grew up and became a serious franchise. But if it doesn't work out the way they're hoping, this bold gamble could haunt them for years to come and become a cautionary tale everyone talks about. With 8 players gone, the entire balance of power inside the Fever locker room has completely changed overnight. For the first time since Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana, the dynamic feels unmistakably centered around her, and not just as a scorer, but as the absolute franchise cornerstone that everything revolves around. The veterans who once controlled the tempo, set the tone, and even ran the locker room hierarchy are mostly gone now. And what's left is a team built specifically to follow Clark's lead without question. Kelsey Mitchell now stands as one of the very few holdovers with both seniority and real respect. And after years of carrying this franchise through painful losing seasons, she's proven her loyalty and toughness beyond any doubt. Her chemistry with Clark grew noticeably better toward the end of the season, especially when both players finally started to find their rhythm sharing the backcourt together, and insiders say the front office views Mitchell as a critical anchor, a veteran presence who can both mentor younger players and adapt seamlessly to a faster, more fluid offensive system. She's expected to play a huge role in guiding the young core forward and keeping everything stable during this transition. And then there's Aaliyah Boston, the quiet enforcer who does her work without all the noise. Boston's consistency, both on and off the court, made her completely untouchable during this entire roster overhaul. And together with Clark, she forms the rock-solid foundation of the franchise's future for years to come. The front office reportedly sees them as the dual faces of Indiana moving forward. Clark is the spark that ignites everything, and Boston is the steady force that holds it all together, and that's exactly why almost every single personnel move is now designed specifically to enhance their partnership and surround them with shooters, screen setters, and reliable defenders who can actually keep up with their pace. But not everyone is thrilled about this new order taking over. Some remaining players have quietly expressed concern that the team's identity is being completely swallowed by Clark's massive spotlight, and others are questioning whether management is putting way too much pressure on one player way too soon in her career. Caitlin's popularity has literally transformed the Fever from a struggling small market team into one of the league's biggest draws overnight, and that kind of attention comes with its own unique set of challenges that most players never have to deal with. Every game she plays, every comment she makes, every decision she's involved in gets magnified under this intense microscope, but still, the message from the top is absolutely firm and clear. This is Caitlin's team now, period. front office executives have reportedly held multiple meetings stressing complete alignment, meaning coaches, players, and staff must all operate in perfect unison with this new vision they're building, and one source described the whole thing as a reset, not a rebuild, which is an important distinction. In other words, anyone who doesn't buy into this direction and commit fully won't last very long in Indiana. It's that simple, and inside practice, there's already a noticeable difference in how things feel. The energy feels lighter and more positive, the pace is quicker and more up-tempo, and the offense flows way more fluidly than it did before. Teammates are learning to move off Clark's instincts and reads rather than waiting around for drawn-out plays to be called from the sideline. And yeah, it's messy at times, there are mistakes and confusion, but it's real progress happening, and for the first time in years, there's genuine belief inside that building that this team could actually become a legitimate contender. But power always comes with a price, and the pressure on Clark, White, and the entire front office has never been higher than it is right now. One wrong move, one ugly losing streak, and the same fans celebrating this bold new direction could turn on them fast, because the Fever cleaned house and made their big statement. But whether they cleaned it the right way and made the right calls remains to be seen over the next season. Behind every shocking roster decision lies one thing that most fans completely overlook: the money. The Indiana Fever's front office didn't just clear players purely for performance reasons, they cleared serious salary space, and by releasing 8 contracts all at once, the Fever freed up millions in cap room, and that changes absolutely everything heading into the 2026 season. This wasn't just about basketball decisions and who fits the system, it was about building real financial flexibility in a league where every single dollar counts and impacts what you can do. The Fever's payroll had completely ballooned with mid-tier contracts that offered very little return on investment. Veterans like Natasha Howard and Ariel Powers came with plenty of experience, sure, but they also came with hefty price tags attached. Both looked solid on paper when you read their stats, but neither one elevated the team to championship level when it actually mattered, and sources say the front office grew seriously frustrated watching large chunks of salary eaten up by players who just weren't producing consistent results night after night. Cutting ties was harsh and difficult, no doubt about it, but it gave Indiana the room they desperately needed to chase higher impact talent this offseason, and more importantly, players who actually complement Caitlin Clark's game instead of working against it. It's no secret at this point that Clark has completely changed the business side of the Fever organization. Ticket sales absolutely skyrocketed, primetime TV slots increased dramatically, and merchandise sales broke every franchise record they had. The front office completely understands that as long as she's on the roster, the Fever are a premium product that fans will pay to see, and that makes the stakes even higher than before, and the margin for error so much smaller. Ownership wants to capitalize on this momentum while it lasts, because windows like this don't stay open forever, and that's exactly why the rebuild isn't just athletic and strategic, it's deeply financial too. Every contract they sign, every endorsement deal they make, and every partnership they form moving forward has to align perfectly with that vision of maximizing this era, and Kelly Kroskoff, one of the Fever's key executives, has reportedly been the driving force behind this entire financial reset. Her strategy is actually pretty simple when you break it down. Surround Clark with low-cost, high-IQ players who can stretch the floor, knock down open shots, and buy into a modern offensive system without demanding max contract. The Fever want shooters who move constantly without the ball, veterans who are willing to take lesser pay for a real shot at winning culture, and younger players who are hungry for opportunity and ready to prove themselves. Think Iowa on steroids, but built within a realistic budget that doesn't handcuff the franchise for years. And that's where the Fever might have actually found a new competitive edge over other teams. While other WNBA franchises are overspending trying to chase super teams and big names, Indiana is quietly building a sustainable foundation that can last, a roster that fits together both stylistically and financially without creating long-term problems. The franchise wants long-term control over their future, not short-term hype that fades after one season, and they want to build around Clark in Boston without being completely handcuffed by bad contracts or inflated salaries that limit their options down the road. Still, not everyone is applauding this aggressive approach. Some agents have publicly criticized the Fever for being way too aggressive in clearing players, saying it sends a terrible message that loyalty means absolutely nothing in Indiana. But to the front office, loyalty Loyalty alone doesn't win championships. Smart structure does, and they're betting everything that disciplined spending and smarter roster construction will turn the Fever into a perennial contender rather than just a one-year wonder that flames out. At the end of the day, these moves weren't really about cutting players who didn't perform. They were about cutting costs and cutting excuses at the same time, and the Fever's message is loud and incredibly clear to everyone watching. If you can't deliver real value on the court or make sense on the balance sheet, you won't be part of this new era they're building. Because from here on out, everything in Indiana runs through two things: Caitlin Clark and the bottom line. The moment the news hit that the Fever had released 8 players in one night, social media absolutely exploded. Within minutes, hashtags like Fever Purge and Clark Era were trending across X and Instagram, and some fans were calling it the boldest move in franchise history, while others were accusing the front office of completely losing control. The WNBA community hasn't seen a roster overhaul this dramatic in years, maybe ever, and absolutely everyone had an opinion, from professional analysts to former players to diehard fans who'd followed the Fever through every single painful losing season. For Caitlin Clark supporters, this was pure validation of everything they'd been saying. They argued that the team had wasted way too much time trying to force Clark into a system that just didn't suit her at all. Let her cook became a rallying cry again, echoing across comment sections and sports talk shows everywhere, and fans flooded message boards demanding that the Fever adopt the fast-paced, free-flowing style that made Clark a household name back at Iowa. They wanted the old fire back, the deep logo threes, the ridiculous no-look passes, the fearless leadership that made her must-watch TV, but not everyone agreed with this direction at all. Critics accused the organization of caving to star power and hype. Some said the mass cuts were a clear sign that the Fever were bowing to pressure from fans and big sponsors instead of trusting actual basketball judgment. Others pointed out that rebuilding around a single player, no matter how insanely talented they are, can seriously backfire if the chemistry doesn't work out, and ESPN panels debated non-stop whether the Fever were building a future dynasty or making a desperate gamble. One headline even read Indiana's rebuild, genius or panic, which pretty much summed up how divided everyone was, and inside the locker room, reactions were really mixed too. Players close to those who got released described the mood as somber but expected, like everyone kinda saw it coming, and a few shared emotional farewell posts on social media, thanking teammates and fans while also hinting at some frustration behind the scenes. Meanwhile, younger players expressed genuine excitement for what's next, saying the team finally feels focused and united for the first time. And it's this bittersweet balance, loss and hope completely intertwined. The media circus only intensified when fans noticed that Clark herself had liked a few posts supporting the roster changes, and that tiny digital gesture sent the internet into another absolute frenzy, with thousands of comments dissecting what it meant. Did she approve of the move? Did she finally take full ownership of the team's direction? Whether it was intentional or not, it fed the narrative that Clark is now both the face and the real force behind Indiana's total transformation, and TV networks wasted absolutely no time jumping all over the story. Talk shows debated for hours how this move would reshape the WNBA's power dynamics, especially as the league pushes hard for expansion and higher ratings across the board. And suddenly, Indiana, once a struggling franchise nobody paid attention to, was dominating headlines and generating record online engagement. Love it or hate it, the Fever became the league's most talked about team overnight, and through all the chaos and noise, one thing is absolutely undeniable: this roster purge has reignited fan interest in a way the league desperately needed. The Fever might have lost 8 players, but they've gained something way bigger: relevance, intrigue, and the full attention of the entire basketball world watching their every move. Now that the storm has finally cleared, the Indiana Fever find themselves standing at a serious crossroads. With 8 players gone, tons of open cap space, and the spotlight brighter than it's ever been, this offseason could literally define the next decade of the franchise's future. The front office has one clear goal: to build a team that not only fits Caitlin Clark's game perfectly, but also restores the Fever's identity as a legitimate powerhouse in the league. And this is no longer a team searching for direction or trying to figure things out. It's a team aggressively rewriting its entire future. Insiders say the Fever's front office already has an aggressive plan in motion. They're targeting shooters who can thrive off Clark's passing, wings who can defend without slowing down the pace, and veteran leaders who understand how to win in high-pressure moments. One executive described the ideal roster as fast, fearless, and fluid, which honestly sounds amazing, and the goal is crystal clear. Build a modern offense, center it completely around Clark's instincts, and Aaliyah Boston's dominance in the paint, and expect the Fever to look completely different next season, both stylistically and emotionally. The coaching staff is reportedly under serious pressure to adopt a much more open, creative system, and practices are expected to focus heavily on movement, spacing, and read-based reactions, rather than rigid play calling. It's a full cultural reset from top to bottom, and it's exactly what fans have been begging to see since Clark's arrival in Indiana, but it's not going to be easy. Rebuilds never are. Every rebuild comes with real risks. It takes time, egos have to adjust, and expectations are sky high right now. And Caitlin Clark isn't just a player, she's the face of the league's entire next generation. Every shot she takes, every loss the team endures, will be magnified under the national lens, and if the Fever stumble out of the gate next season, critics will circle fast and start questioning everything. The front office knows that patience will be thin, and the noise around the team will be absolutely deafening, but still, there's something undeniably electric about what's happening in Indiana right now. Fans are buying tickets again, merchandise is flying off shelves, and for the first time in years, the Fever have something the WNBA can't manufacture: genuine anticipation and excitement. The combination of Clark's star power, Boston's solid foundation, and a fresh roster built for speed could turn this team into must-watch television every single night. And this isn't just a rebuild, it's a full-on revolution happening in real time. The Fever have cleared out the old guard, completely reshaped their vision, and placed the entire future squarely in the hands of their young superstar. And if they succeed, this offseason purge will be remembered as the exact moment Indiana rose from the ashes. But if it fails, it could become a cautionary tale about what happens when a franchise bets absolutely everything on one player, no matter what. Either way, the next chapter of Fever basketball won't be quiet, it'll be bold, unpredictable, and driven by a single mission: to make sure Caitlin Clark's era delivers everything the league and the fans have been waiting for. The Indiana Fever's decision to release 8 players wasn't just a roster move, it was a statement. This is the dawn of a new era, one defined by bold decisions, sharper vision, and total commitment to building around Caitlin Clark. The franchise is done playing it safe. They're betting everything on a system that unleashes her full potential and restores the fire that once made Indiana a contender. Fans can sense it, the shift in energy, the promise of something bigger. Whether this gamble becomes the turning point or the team's biggest risk remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the Fever have everyone watching. From the boardroom to the court, every choice now carries weight, and as a new season approaches, one message echoes through the league: the Caitlin Clark era has officially begun in Indiana.